like even the concept of getting ahead, I think about this visually, which is like if you have this timeline of life that you can pull towards you, and it's glass in the beginning, and then it's slightly less coarse, and then less coarse, and then it gets neutral, and then it starts to get a little bit sweeter and a little bit sweeter and a little bit sweeter. But you have to get through that glass period where you pull it towards you. And I do have this theory that like on a long enough time horizon, if we could live 1,000 years, everyone would eventually be successful. But people wait too long and they die too early. And I say die too early on a long timeline. And so I have to live today and tomorrow and the next day so I can live 3 days at a time so I can get to my second and third life's benefits now. And so that was what, like, I remember the only times that I took off when I was at the gym. And one of the biggest things that I was grateful for with the gyms is that I moved across the country. And so I knew no one. I was in Huntington Beach, I was from Baltimore, like no one. And what would happen, so one of the gifts of that was that once the week was over, so my Saturday sessions were done at like noon, my phone didn't ring. No, like in some ways, very sad, because like no one wanted to see Alex. You know what I mean? Like no one was inviting me out. But I was like, well, fuck, like I gotta make this work. And so I'd sit there and I'd be like, how do I sell memberships? How do I market? How do I everything, you know? But that was how I got ahead. The sacrifices that I encourage people to take are not sacrifices I did not make. And I don't say that there's no ways to get there. I'm just saying that this is the way I got there. And if this path works for you, then maybe it works better than what you're doing right now, which is I had a lot of pain. And so I tried to use it. I just used what I had. I was just angry. I didn't want to fail. And so I just kept going. And so there was no there just wasn't another option. And so I think that's what I would encourage people to think about was like, I didn't allow another option because the other option was just worse than dying. Because I mean, I've told this story before and things get hyperbolized. I mean, exaggerated, romanticized, whatever. But like when I had my big consulting job, I was making good money and I had the approval of my peers and all this stuff. And I just didn't want to wake up the next day every day. And it wasn't like I was trying to kill myself. It wasn't that. But every night I would think if I didn't wake up tomorrow, I would be okay with it. And so when I knew that was what I was going back to, if I didn't make this work, I had no plan B. I mean, I had plan B is that I would drive Uber and strip. I joke about that, but that was very much my plan B if I didn't make it work. And I get grilled on social media for saying this because of like fucking race wars, but like there have been slaves for thousands of years. There were slaves in Egyptian times. There were Jews who were slaves. There were Persian slaves. There were white slaves. There were black slaves. Humans have enslaved one another, period. And I like to think of things in extremes because it allows me to think about what's possible. And so the idea that someone else at some other time in history has worked 7 days a week, every hour that they're awake, with the threat not of their own death, but of their children's death, because that's what I would do if I were trying to control somebody. I would take their kids and say, I'll kill them if you don't work. And guess what? They'll probably work. That capacity exists. And so I would think to myself, like, I would try and put myself in that frame so that I wouldn't get into the woe is me cycle and think all these things I could blame for why I'm here right now. Why isn't this working as fast? Like, how is it that these guys are making more money than me? Like, why don't these people give me the respect I deserve? Blah, 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 blah. And just say like, what can I do now? And then just every hour of every day, well, what can I do now? And so it was, I have to learn how to market. I have to learn how to sell. I have to go to these groups where other gym owners are, and I got to learn their stuff. I gotta go to these seminars. I gotta save up so I can learn some stuff. And that's what I did. And so that's how I got out of it.